Hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk about that as a product manager, how can you drive impact through storytelling within your organization as you come across different stakeholders, decision makers who are funding your project, engineers and designers building the product, and marketers and salespeople taking it out to customers. But before I start, here is my brief intro. My name is Parag Agrawal, and I am a product manager working in Microsoft India. A little about my career journey. I joined Microsoft in 2004 as a customer support engineer. Later on, I moved into product development and testing. For the last 8 years, I'm into product management. In my current role, I'm reimagining recruiting platform for Microsoft by bringing AI and productivity to its core. I left Microsoft in between and co-founded social networking startup to ease buying and selling, and by making it transparent and secure within closed communities. In my free time, I build small apps and tools. So if you want to discuss an interesting problem and take it to daylight, just drop a connection request. So today, what are we going to talk about? So first of all, we are going to talk about three things. Why stories are so important for product managers. How can you create and deliver a killer pitch? And finally, I will introduce a framework that can bring some structure to the madness and help us craft powerful narratives. But let me set some context here first. As you look at this visual, I really don't need to reiterate the role of product manager, which is product manager has to work with several people within the organization to get an idea or a product to life. And what that means is collaborating with people requires a lot of communication. Some do it very well and some may not do it that well. I have seen PMs writing great narratives and at the same time, a lot of PMs getting discouraged with narratives and storytelling and feel that it's a creative skill that they lack. But that's not true. Every manager or every product manager can be a storyteller, and believe it or not, it can be leveraged in all forms of communication, whether you are pitching the very idea in front of decision makers, in terms of leaders, or convincing your squad of engineers and designers to get along with your vision, even in sprint retrospectives, where you share the stories of success or failures, or even shaping the communication with marketing and sales team. And this is why it becomes so important for product managers to master the art of storytelling, to keep the team motivated and clear about the product they're building. Building a brand story that team feels connected to. How do you position it in a way where they feel attached to the cause? And how do you identify and promote features which add values in users' life? I read this interesting quote somewhere on internet which says, instead of building a product and then figure out how to market it, first figure out how to market it and then build a product. And this is so very true. So now that we understand that why storytelling is such a key skill, let's dive into the key aspects of storytelling. So first of all, what is a great story and how do you define it? It's really about three things. It is emotional, that will touch your heart. It is novel, that will teach you something new. And it is memorable, that will present content in ways your audience will not forget. Typically, all marketing and sales pitches all covers all these aspects. But on the contrary, within organizations, we really don't do this very often. Business presentations tend to be really, really dry and really straightforward. To be honest, most of the time, they require your brain to focus on just information processing. And then brain kind of shuts down when going through such a dry and a long presentation. But on the other side, humans will always love storytelling because it does inspire rest of the mind, especially the one which is emotion. Because stories are rich with emotions, they are rich with human elements, and they're rich with experience, and they're driven by experience. So I want to show you some examples and talk to you about what it is going to take to get you there. And throughout my discussion, I will guide you through a framework that will help fill in the blank kind of an exercise. And from that narrative, we will produce a written document that can be the kind of a perfect story that you want to present to your stakeholders. So let's begin with what's the story and what does it require? My core definition is the story is fundamentally an experience. Human lives for and love experiences. Humans have imagination, they have memories, they have languages, which gives us the ability to virtualize experiences through the written word, either through spoken words or through visual content. Great stories are able to create experiences that inspire emotions, new ways of thinking, and ultimately drive people to action and their experiences. So, when you think about your presentation in front of your organization or customers, your job as a product manager is really to create an experienced and a driven moment, which is full of information, it is full of wisdom, and you're trying to tell people that what is that you're doing, what it is about, and what does it really mean. Can you give them experiences that they can virtually live, that can define the meaning of the product or service in an easy way that speak not just the technical or transaction details of what you do, but it also speaks to the human factors, human interactions, and human experiences. So now this is at a very, very high level, right? And this is a lot of theory. There is a lot of theory here. So let's dive into what it actually looks like. In business, there are typically two types of stories, and it's very important to understand. So they are the first kind of story is transactional, and the other kind of stories are human centric. And I want to show you two short videos on human trafficking, which is a very powerful subject, but you will see the difference in the way they are delivered.
Thorn was founded a little over 5 years ago to drive technology innovation to fight child sexual exploitation.
I brought it up to a friend of mine who said, oh, no, it's happening like here, like right here.
We have leveraged multiple AWS services and products, including services that leverage Intel processors, and these have helped us move more quickly, helped us deliver solutions that are effective and scaled globally. They allow us to take massive amounts of data and turn it into action to find children faster and stop abuse around the world.
Early on, we started working with AWS in the launch and development of Spotlight. We actually were able to launch the tool within about a 4-month period and able to quickly get out a test version of the tool into the hands of the officers on the front line so that they could quickly tell us what's working and what's not.
We are using Amazon EC2 instances for our infrastructure. And what that's really allowed us to do as a nonprofit is allow for them to scale up and down whenever we need to, if we're seeing a volume or a fluctuation or we need to expand or scale with new functionality that we have in the application.
We are also able to quickly implement machine learning models without having to worry about building an entire infrastructure.
We went from 100 officers to thousands of officers within about a year's time. What we hear from those officers that use Spotlight on a regular basis is that it can decrease their investigative time by up to 65%.
AWS has been really instrumental for us, is kind of growing with us as our products mature to move really quickly and focus on functionality, whether it's using AWS SQS for queuing or creating a scalable ETL system using AWS Lambda. But also later on, as these products mature and we take on more logic on our end and deploying directly to EC2 instances, like the C5 instance that is powered by Intel Xeon processors.
The difference that technology has made to speed up investigations has been substantial. We know over the last 2 years, there's been 21,000 human trafficking investigations in which Spotlight has been reported to assist in, more than 6,000 juveniles, so that's about 8 children a day. AWS is a critical partner in the fight against online child sexual abuse. Partnering with AWS allows us to innovate and move quickly in these instances. It allows us to scale up, to scale down, to move globally, and also to bring on more partners very rapidly with kind of minimal incremental cost. And that, all of that combined works on behalf of these kids.
Do I feel I could have been found sooner? We've been partnering with Amazon for a couple of years now, and recognition in particular has been really instrumental in speeding up the time that a detective can find a victim.
You're getting somebody off the street in a week or two that may have been out there for 6 months.
Guns, drugs, locking the doors behind me. You basically become a robot. You make it okay.
There are other products out there that do photo recognition, but facial recognition was the one that really jumped out to us.
It makes it possible that a detective can start with a photo of a missing child and find them within days and arrest their trafficker and reunite the victim with their family.
That's a question I get asked all the time. Does it really go on here? And yeah, it goes on here. It goes on way more than people realize. Being forced to do this, I wouldn't wish that upon my worst enemy. So,
Who I am you see today is me. They stole my soul for a very long time, but now I'm not gonna let them steal it again.
It really is AI for good. It's game changing.
So, which one did you like? I bet definitely the second one, because it doesn't bore you with so many technical details and get straight right to the topic, how technology can transform the human experience. While the first one was transactional in nature, and this is something that we are very much used to within organizations, which is to hear description of transactions, which are not stories, but transactions. By transactions, I mean that there are new products or services we are building. What are the new metrics that we are being measured? What is a mission? What is a vision, right? And they are hard to translate, which resonates with people. They don't really understand it very well. So, purpose of this talk is how, as a product managers, we can get good at telling human experience within the organization. And that is applicable to the customers as well. So let's talk about two facets. How do you create a story, and then how you deliver a story? The first and the most important thing that I'm harping on is to find best stories through finding experiences that defines things you know that you do as part of your work. When I talk to aspiring product managers who are getting out of college or who are trying to find jobs, one thing that I tell them, that when they tell me that they have passion for technology, building apps in the tech world, but then I tell them nobody cares about your passion. What they really are drawn to is what happened to you that made you passionate. So when you just start thinking about the notion of great stories, you can tell or think about the experiences that define you. Personally, that's a very rich topic. The other areas of stories are about your customers. For example, in a service organization, if you have a frontline experience with customers, you know customer pain, and you can tell story about that customer pain. Ideally, tell the story about the customer pain that was solved or you are trying to solve because of a service or the work that you have provided, and that's the right kind of a story. It's a story of transformation, where your customer was a hero and how you will help him or how you help him to a better way to be. And then there are stories about each other within the teams. There are stories about the teams, what drives the team, stories about broad scope of people who surrounds you, and creating experiences for your customers. The way you do that is easily, so it's pretty easy to say, but it's hard to do. I will acknowledge that. The way to do it is to ask a lot of questions and look at yourself at a mirror, right? And try to draw some experiences. These are the questions that speaks to your personal experiences or the experiences that surround your team, your customers. What work that you're doing, are they designed to spark awareness? Questions like, why are you here? What was the pivotal movement that led you to work on this field or a project? What's the biggest risk you have ever taken? Who has the greatest impact regarding the work you do? Does that work remind you some aspect of your life? What's your team most important moment? Focus on experiences and be mindful and understand that you don't need a lot. So when I say that, you don't need to like pack 20 to 30 elements in your story, where you only need to define the one very important moment, which is very personal. It also has those great attributes, and that speaks to the nature of the work or job you do. That is both personal and business relevant. All right, so now let's talk about what does it take to deliver a great story? And there are several ways to do that. And I want to begin with something that is most important part, and it has to do with being aware of what your audience knows. More specifically, what your audience doesn't know. And if you're not aware of this, you will definitely going to make mistakes, because you're gonna miss the opportunity to connect with your audience. So what are those attributes and what are those essential things? One of the things that I'm going to do to insist you that you have a killer opening. A way people find the way to a story is through the detail, and it doesn't need to have all the details. All it needs to be thoughtful. But how much time do you really have for a killer opening? There was some research done, and as per that research, an average attention span of consumer is somewhere between 10 to 15 seconds, which means that within 10 to 15 seconds, your audience will have an open mind to listen to you. Otherwise, they will stay out of your topic, and they will be present there, but their attention, they are not going to pay attention to your topic. So you need to open strong, just like all great TED Talk does. And all of the good TED Talks has a compelling and a powerful opening. So when you have a thoughtful idea at the outset, you create attention in people's mind that wants to know that how is it going to unfold. You have laid out a truth and a reality, and you have given a vision for something better. This is very different than how we are taught to speak in business, which is stakeholders, your leadership team, your decision makers. When we speak in business, we tend to begin, there's a formula that most of us apply when we are giving presentations in business. The formula involves saying that I'm going to tell you who am I, or I'm going to give you a background, or I'm going to tell you all the people who are involved, and then what are you trying to achieve, and then I'm going to ease in. Now you realize that you are in those 3 to 4 minutes into the presentation before you provide one bit of an experience. So here is what you want to consider doing something else. You need to think about how you open that first 15 to 20 seconds in a way that becomes irresistible, that people insist on hearing what are you going to say next. So the opening is absolutely critical. Think it is actually really, really most important part. Okay, so next step is bringing something new. Bringing people, the novelty. This could be a new experience. Ideally, in a lot of TED Talks, there are movements that are physical. One of the biggest TED Talks I've ever seen is when Bill Gates got up in the TED Talk and started talking about malaria and held up a jar of mosquitoes and said that this is the deadliest animal in the world. They were live mosquitoes, and then he opens up and let the mosquitoes fly in the audience. And at that moment, is one of the most powerful and thoughtful moment in his talk. He actually brought the topic to life. But as we all know, right, this is not possible to do in every talk. And they are once in a lifetime events. However, the point that I'm trying to make here is that there is some visual, this is where visual matters, and people talk about it where I do use visuals in my presentations. I'm asking you to create your narrative first and foremost in the strength of the story, and then think of visuals. Let's say if you're building a new tool or you're building a new experience, you have the opportunity to show people the interfaces, and the elements of it in the context of the challenge that you have. That could be about the customer pain or the vision of creating a better world or better outcomes. And finally, all you can do this by following a very simple framework, which will ask you a lot of questions and will help you to craft powerful narratives. So let's take a look at this framework. It's divided into 4 main sections. First one is the scope that helps you define the impact you want your story to have. And what is a story all about? Most important part here is, how can you define your whole story in a small sentence? That becomes your pitch title followed by short description. So for example, when I started my project to modernize recruiting platform, it said, candidate for improvement, building a better recruiting platform. And then it has a short description that read like this: if a great candidate has a bad recruiting experience, the damage can run painfully deep. So this team made it their mission to simplify the complexity and deliver a new solution to improve recruiting. So now you know, right? It sets the tone right away. And now audience will be curious to know more. Now next section is all about opening, something that captures attentions and sets the stage. In my case, I told my audience a little story about my friend who had a terrible experience with recruiting and how it left a bad impression on company values and processes. Then you talk about the journey that describes the situation in detail in terms of what were the problems faced, what are the challenges in current system, and what steps can be taken or were taken to solve the problem. This is also the right time to have visuals and data points as applicable. For example, in my case, I presented the complexity at which Microsoft recruiting operates. And if we continue to have a bad candidate experience, how deep this damage can be for a company. I also backed my story with industry research and statistics to make it more relevant for decision-making process. And at the last, conclude the story by giving what are the key takeaways you want your audience to go with, and how can they help in your overall goal if applicable or if possible. In my case, the key takeaway that I wanted my audience to go was that we need to treat candidate as a potential customers. And how can they help us to get even better by sending us suggestions and feedback. With that, I'm at the end of my presentation. So I just want to conclude by saying that start practicing storytelling with your organization in every possible avenue and do it over and over again. It will make you more comfortable. Thank you for listening.